The little bork
I
guy.
love that guy. So it's Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central. You know what that means. Welcome to the BBQ Nerds Podcast, where we geek out so your barbecue doesn't flame out. This week's podcast is Clean Your Pits. As always, I'm Dave Fier, also known as the Real Meat Stick, and with me is Mr. Frank Cox, the barbecue pit engineer himself from Smoker Builder. So,
Hey, buddy.
as always, we're going to be starting this thing off with doing a little introduction. Frank, great to have you here. I know that tonight is a topic very close to you, very close to me, making sure that we keep our pits maintained, clean, ready to go for those upcoming barbecues so that we don't have any of these massive flare-ups. I got to tell you, even when I started in the beginning, and I started on that gas grill as a child that my father had in the backyard. We had a Weber. It was we used natural gas. And one of the things that would occur, we didn't know at that point about just how necessary it was to clean the pit so that you get your creosote off and all the other burnt up material on the inside. Or even during those times that we would try to burn things off, occasionally you get that grease fire. Has this ever occurred to you? You're the master of barbecue.
Dude, we had a grease fire one time that was super bad. It was 2017 whole hog cook. In my cooker, we called the hog coffin. I got to spell it every time I say it because we spelt it obnoxiously. HAWGCAWFFIN. That's how we spelt hog coffin. Anyway, my buddy, Mr. Voigt, and Spearman, Pig Daddy Spearman, those guys all remember because they was there. Terry Rodcrafter was there. But yeah, it got out of hand really quick. And man, there ain't nothing that can hurt somebody worse than a grease fire. But cleaning your pits isn't just about preventing grease fires and stuff like that. There's also some super bad toxins that can get in your pit, and if they're not properly cared for and cleaned, and it can actually, I always say the best way to ruin a pit is don't cook on it and don't clean it. Like that's the thing that kills it faster than anything. Mm-hmm.
So, did you know that if you don't clean those pits beyond the grease, just the creosote itself, that tarry gunk that you get from the smoke can ignite in seconds? As a firefighter, and this has been going on all the time. I got to tell people about this. Chimney fires, the creosote from people burning wood, burning pellets in their fireplace in their home. If you don't clean that chimney out, one of these days it's going to light up, and it's not funny, but you get flames that come shooting out the chimney of your home. And then firefighters like myself and others out there have to come in, shovel the wood out of your fireplace, get all that fire out. And then unfortunately, it's red hot. Those bricks don't like water. There's a good chance that when the bricks are that hot and we hit it with a fire hose, that we're going to end up cracking the bricks. That masonry work is gone. Fortunately here, when we're dealing with barbecue pits, they're made of very good types of metal. And I tell people, even when it comes to the barbecues in their backyard, when they get a blazing fire, please don't open up the cover to your grill, to your smoker. You're adding oxygen to the fire. Keep it closed. If you have the availability to be able to close the dampers, as long as the oxygen doesn't get to the fire, you're able to kill that fire out. And this is one of the reasons why I think it was so important for you and I to have this discussion tonight about cleaning the pits so that you don't have this fire that can ignite in seconds. Did you know that one study says that flare-ups cause 3,000 grill fires a year? I've seen it. Like I said, my own pit as a child went up as a Roman candle, and we see this again in fireplaces in people's homes.
Yeah. So for reference, guys, I should have actually done it already, but I think in the description of the video, we're going to have a link to a video I did on the Smoker Builder YouTube channel. If you're listening on iTunes after we had the show live, go to Smoker Builder on YouTube. There's a video there that says how to clean and season your pit, and that's where I take a deep dive into one of my pits and go the full deal. It's a big offset I call bingo. But grease and flare-ups and stuff like that, that's all really bad and dangerous and stuff like that. But not cleaning your pit can have some other issues that can cause a lot of other things to happen, such as like they always say, rust is one of the things that'll happen.
Right.
But more importantly than that, we're talking about a greasy pit. So what grows in that greasy stuff in the middle of the spring? Like, you ever open up a pit and you see that white mold that just goes left to right and some other kinds of colors in there too. Like, I've opened up drums that look like it snowed inside from all the, like, on drum smokers and stuff. Have you ever seen that?
I've seen people's pits that they leave them covered, and it's just a cesspool of bacteria and other microorganisms that are growing in there. And then you ask yourself, like, maybe we should order out this.
Yeah.
I don't think that tonight's the night you should light this and we all become the next bioterrorism experiment.
I love it when people are posting pictures of their whatever they're cooking, ribs, chicken, whatever it is, and you see expanded metal cooking grates that are starting to close up from all the food buildup,
right?
And the grease. I'm just like, my gosh, you got to really be careful, man. Like where you go and what you're getting exposed to, because the longer you wait to clean it, the worse it's going to be to clean it. It's going to take a lot more elbow grease to do it,
So what do you suggest when it comes to cleaning these pits? So let's say it's, one of these individuals you're talking about, and we know that there's plenty of people out there. They cook and cook and cook, and you're lucky if once a season they clean their pits. Some of them can go
seasoned.
They can go many seasons without seasoning and cleaning their pits. And like you had mentioned, things like rust come into play on the bars that are on the inside, whether it's expanded metal or it happens to be round bar. And they begin to close up, or they begin to rust and pit and crack. And how do you remedy this situation? What do you do?
So when I'm on my A game, which is rare, I'm usually on my B game is usually where I'm at. So when I'm on my A game, if I have the time immediately after a cook while it's hot, just dousing with some hot water in the pit and then letting it steam will take care of like 99% of everything. Also, while it's hot, just open, like on an offset or something like that, a bigger cooker that's got a drain valve, just leave the drain valve open with a pan underneath of it during your cook. And a lot of that stuff will drain down and get out. The real problem comes in when you don't do that and everything cools down. Then we're starting to get, like, overnight, especially in the winter, overnight, everything starts to kind of like get solid,
Right.
as it sits there and the pit temperature goes down, it starts to get hard, and then it's really hard to make yourself go back out. Of course, you just spent 12 hours cooking a brisket. It's not exactly exciting to clean your pit immediately after that. So the next morning, if you at least light a fire and heat things up first, good scraper, wire brushes, kind of things. I'm the kind of guy that's not afraid just to go ahead and power wash, especially if it's fresh enough. But if you wait a long time, it's just going to sit there and get hard, and especially if you ran the pit again and cooked on it multiple times, you start to not just build bark on your food, but you're turning all of that build up into bark. So
right. Canned meat barbecue, canned meat competition barbecue. I just brought this quote up that he has here, and he's right. I do hear the same thing he's saying here. He writes, I hear people all the time say they don't clean their pits because it adds flavor. I hear the same thing.
Yeah, all the time.
Is there any truth behind that?
No, none whatsoever.
Hmm.
So seasoning, let's dwell on this for a minute, because seasoning your pit is when you're trying to get a non-stick surface on the inside of the smoker so that a lot of this buildup comes off easy. That's the whole point behind seasoning. The second part of it is so that whenever you get that polymerized oil on the inside of the pit, it literally protects the inside of the pit from rust.
Hmm.
And that rust, eventually, if a pit is not cooked in, what typically kills it the fastest is a thing called delamination. And that's where the steel, like when you see flaky steel, that's been sitting and rusting and stuff like that, exposed to the environment for a long period of time, especially if there's been something caustic in there, you'll start to see that steel, those layers of steel start to delaminate, which means they peel.
Wow.
They're no longer together. And that's how you begin like a hole in your pit, especially if it's thinner material. Whenever that delaminates, it gets weak and eventually it blows out, just from time. Especially if you go in there and try to clean it for once,
Right.
you start knocking holes in it.
I've heard people say that it's necessary to get the ash out of your firebox. If we're talking with say an offset smoker, to get the
Mhm.
ash out, so that water, however the water gets in, doesn't get in there and mix with the ash. And
Yep.
there's this rumor that it creates some type of acid, and that acid eats through the metal. Is that the caustic acid that you're speaking of?
In some cases, I mean, because what you wind up with is like lye.
Hmm.
It's very acidic, and like potash, that's basically kind of what they're talking about there. Yeah, if you just leave ash in your pit, what happens is it draws moisture. And if your pit may not leak around the doors, but I guarantee it's not liquid tight. There's no way. And so as the temperature outside goes up and down, the pit environment inside of there also goes up and down. And sometimes if it's been baking in the sun all day long and you got a really humid environment in there, whether it's vapor from the air, water vapor from the air or whatever, at night it's going to start to condense, and then all that moisture winds up blending in with whatever's in the cook chamber or the firebox. And then that's actually what causes this magical erosion to happen. That starts to eat away at the fire. But the pits die from the inside out. That's what I always say. Almost never from the outside in. That's the part we're worried about. So we keep it painted and keep it trying to look good.
That's right.
And the inside, we're closing the door and hiding it when we go to bed. But I want to get back on that other deal when we were talking about seasoning, though.
Sure.
My buddy Colby Archie or Cody, one of those two boys, one time posted a video. If you go onto Instagram or the TikTok, if you go back in there far enough, you'll see pit hustlers. That was those boys. Anyway, I remember a video they did one time where they were talking about seasoning your pit, and they were always posting really great content. And the inside of their drum smokers, he took the old white glove and went in there and wiped it. Of course, it was black inside his drum. And whenever he wiped his finger, it came out clean. And he said, that's seasoned. If it comes off and it's black on your finger, that's dirty. That's the difference between seasoning a pit and dirty pit. It's just like an iron skillet. Like I cook with cast iron every meal. If I'm cooking, we're using cast iron. I got 2 good skillets, got 2 Dutch ovens, and I got a big old nice flat griddle thing. And we cook everything on that. And, my cast iron, I have a certain way that I wash it after every single time I use it. I have a certain way that I re-season it. There's a quick re-season, then there's the long re-seasoning. And keeping that stuff clean, you shouldn't have, like if you take a towel and wipe it around in there, if you got stuff that comes off on that paper towel, your skillet's dirty. Go back to the hot water or the salt and the oil or whatever you're using to clean that thing with. Go back in there and clean it. And then you can go back and re-season it, and it'll last forever.
So I agree with you. I love to cook with cast iron. I like to say that mine's as smooth as a baby's bottom on the inside, but
I wish mine was.
unfortunately, yeah, I haven't. I guess I haven't used my cast iron pans as often as I would have liked, or they're not as well aged and seasoned. But I do have, believe it or not, on the with some of the flat tops I've used in the past. They're glass shimmered, beautiful, really nice broken in, and that's kind of the way that I'm trying to get my new pits to look. I know it's going to take a while, but for the outside, even after I use them this weekend, I made sure that they were wiped down, they were cleaned. Linseed oil went right back on the outside. I heated them up to make sure that that boiled linseed oil would repolymerize onto the external of the metal. And after I went and gave them a good clean out, sprayed them down with Pam again and heated them up.
Yeah, my favorite tools, I think, in order would be there's a brush from a company. Well, it depends on what kind of grates you got. I got to start there. Assuming you have round bar cooking grates. Most grills have round bar cooking grates. That's my favorite, honestly. If you have those grates, there's a brush from a company called Boyer brush. We're not sponsored by them. I just had some beers with Sylvester, and he gave me a brush, and I started using it, and I love it. Boyer, Boyer brush, and that brush has got like these cool springs that have like this hook in them, and it's stainless steel, and they're springs, and when you take it, they stay in the brush. It's not like a wire brush where the bristles come out. They don't get hooked in stuff, and so you can take and scrape, but that little cupped part, if you keep up with your cooking grate, that cupped part on that wire will start to scrape the sides of that, and that's the hardest part to get, is down underneath on the sides, both sides. Yeah, AK Barbecue Man said Boyer brush kicks ass. He's right. It's a great tool. The other thing that I really like is a 5-in-1 painter's tool. It looks kind of like a hybrid putty knife, or a drywall blade, but it's about 2.5 inches wide. Sometimes you can get wider ones, and it's got like the flat blade that's sharp, and then it's got like a hook in it like that, and the other side's got almost like a squared off hook in it. You can take that and get that down inside of a lot of cool little areas that you can't reach with like just a regular old putty knife or like a 4-inch blade or something like that. I like to have those around, especially if they're flexible, because it'll kind of bend and you can get some pressure on it. Another tool I use quite a lot, if I've got a big pit that is, I'm going to be doing a lot of this, going down the curve of the inside of the wall, or if I've got a pit like the Smoke Slinger full size, that's a flat walled pit. You can take these 4-inch floor scrapers that are sharpened, and they've got a reversible blade on them. Boy, you talk about getting something clean fast. It'll get all the way down to bare metal. You'll need to make sure that there's no like welding debris inside. You'll have to grind that down so it doesn't like get hung on it, but you can clean super fast with that. 90% of cleaning a pit is scraping it. That's what I think. From there, we can do all kinds of other stuff from there. If we get the solid food buildup, that's the worst part, and the liquid that's in there in the chamber. Then you can just heat the pit up and rinse it out at that point.
When you were talking about the putty knife, I can relate to that. Whether I've used pellet cookers in the past and they get full of all the pellet dust and the ash, or again, back to the gas grills, or now moving on to our stick burners and our smoke slingers that are charcoal and wood. I've always found that putty knife, or even if they're using the baking industry, the bakery knives, to be able to get in there and scrape things down. I've had those occasions, like you mentioned earlier with the brisket, or even with the pork butts, that it's nice when it's still a liquid, but I'll allow that fat to coagulate, and now it becomes a lot more tacky. And I find it easier to be able to use that putty knife and scrape everything out. And I get in there with paper towels, and when I get a really good mess, I get a really good chunk. Let's just say for those that are listening on the radio, you get a good pile of grease. I'll take that, scrape it up, get it into the paper towel, and it looks like poop. And you take the whole poop napkin, the whole poop paper towel, and dump that out. And after a few times of doing that, you're able to get a lot of that tough grease as well as the ash all together and pull it out. But Frank, have you ever tried this one? Because I'm seeing now that not necessarily with the gas grills or the pellet cookers, but with our 1/4-inch steel, even our 1/8-inch steel cookers that we have, the getting in there with the weed burner, same tool that we use to light the charcoal, same thing that we use to light our wood, to get in there and burn everything out with the weed burner. I've seen people pro on the circuit doing the same thing. They get in there and they're actually burning everything out from their expanded metal down to the inside of their pits. I would think that it would make sense to unscrew your temperature gauge and pull that out so that you don't spin the dial around or do anything to the 4-inch probe that's on there. But have you seen anything similar to that where people are burning out the entire inside?
Yeah, actually, if you were watching when we were down in Miami, the kosher guy was koshering with the torch.
Yes, he was.
But it didn't look like it was getting clean to me. It still looked like the used grate still had used food on it. So the problem with it is, I think, is that you still got to get the solid buildup off. Like, for instance, like whenever you've got expanded metal grates, like Eric was asking about canned meats competition barbecue.
Sure.
He was asking earlier about expanded metal. You know, the torch can get in there and burn or whatever, but a lot of times that material is only like somewhere between 9 and 11 gauge thick material. So, which is 1/8 of an inch essentially. And it, depending on the construction of the cooking grate, you know, it can warp, and you're sitting there heating this thing up and heating it up and heating this up, especially on a bigger pit. You could actually get some bubble or a little oil can, they call it, where it can like dunk, dunk, you know, they can do that little maneuver. You can get a little bit of that in there, and you can't ever get rid of it. So once it starts doing that, I prefer not to burn them off. Now inside the pit, you could go around with a torch in there and kind of burn off some of the side walls and things like that. But I think, you know, just like anything else, when you start hitting it with the torch, it starts to kind of ash up or kind of crumble up, but it doesn't like necessarily come off. I think you still need to scrape or power wash or something, you know, which talking about power washing, I think the reason that I like that the most, and I don't even worry about like doing it with a hot pit or using any chemicals or anything like that. If you watch the video that I posted earlier, I literally just take and scrape the pit with that flat, flexible blade, and I just get every surface that is scrapable. And then I go through there with the power washer and rinse all that out the best I can. And then I come back with you'll see me in the video with a big brush that's got like a scrub brush with a handle on it, like a broom handle on it. And on a big pit, I can take and scrape that whole thing down, scrub it after I power wash, and then hit it one more time with the power washer. So I'm talking cheap power washer. I'm not like an expensive power washer guy. Karcher or whatever it is from Harbor Freight, that's mine. It's going to freeze and bust anyway every winter. So you're just going to wind up with a new one. So get the good one for like 90 some bucks, you know, maybe 79 bucks. But anyway, power wash that thing down and get rid of all that stuff. You're back to zero, and you can just easily heat it up and season it, you know, no problems.
That's a great process. I have one of these electric power washers. I don't know why. That's what I decided to go with instead of the gas. But it has a feature on there that allows me to heat up water. It has a coil inside.
Oh, cool.
That's
even better.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The same thing. When I'm washing greasy pans here, I don't tend to use cold water. I use hot water on there. Why? Because hot water is obviously going to help with emulsifying the greases and the fats and pull them off. Not to mention using a detergent like Dawn or some other one that breaks right through the grease. So it's going through my head. And again, you know, you put this video out. I had the opportunity to watch it as Mr. Smoke Builder himself educates the public on what to do. And it dawned upon me, there we go, Dawn again, using hot water in the pressure washer, along with some of that dishwashing soap, would that help to get through the grease any quicker, or would it eliminate more of any of the greases that are on there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's going to make a huge difference. By the way, I'm cracking up because I'm reading what Dave and Beth Suss said. Kosher with the torch, best line ever. He was there. So anyway, yeah, the hot water thing is great. As a matter of fact, you know, the restaurant industry with their grease hoods and stuff like that. Of course, I spent a lot of time under a hood, you know, working on stuff and working on those fans and stuff like that. And those guys got to come in quarterly and they scrape everything first. And then they come in and they got this, what they call a hotsy totsy. Some guys call it that, or steam powered or very hot water power washer. My buddy Kurt does that for hoods. Anyway, those guys flat blow through some grease. Of course, they're using chemicals on the hoods and stuff, which you can't really do that in a pit necessarily. You could, I guess, but you're starting from zero every time, and I think it's unnecessary with your seasoning. But if you do have the opportunity to get a power washer that's got hot water in it, by all means, it's the best. Now, I will give you a little parentheses here. Not all power washers are created equal. If you're smart like me, when you built your house, you put a hot and a cold frost-free hydrant in your garage so you can run a hot water line out to clean your pits. Well, I found out you can't put hot water in every power washer, even if you've got hot water available on the fire on your water hose. Some of those, it'll actually mess them up. They got to be designed to take hot water into them before you can actually use them that way and clean with them. But honestly, I found it, you know, it's really great to have that hot water there for like cleaning dishes. And when I'm doing like all my meat grinders and stuff like that, I want to hose all that off out in the back end, you know, because that hose goes a long way from the house. I can go out there on the edge of the woods and clean all that stuff up and keep it out of my sink and my garage and all that stuff. And the coons eat and they're happy and everything's cool, you know. But it's not really necessary for cleaning a pit, I don't. Your little situation with the little heater in it's pretty dang cool, though. I have to check that one out. Yeah.
You're welcome to come here to the lodge.
To the lodge.
There might be a couple of cookers here you're familiar with, and you know, I can use some help and some expertise.
But you want me to come clean them? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying, well, after we use them, we've got to clean them. So one hand washes the other.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, let's get back to Eric's question here real quick. Thoughts on putting oil dry or kitty litter in the bottom of the pit? You know, the first time I ever heard, have you ever heard of this?
I've heard of the kitty litter, but oil dry, I don't know about that. I mean, I know we use that when we have spills on the road. We're told to put that down.
Yeah. So the first time I ever heard about this was I was cooking at Cosmo's shop. I brought him a drum. And first thing he did, he went and grabbed his little kitty litter thing, started dumping some kitty litter in the bottom. I was like, dude, this stuff's not safe to cook with. He's like, wrong. It is actually. You just have to get the right kind. I didn't know there was a different kind. But there is some that is like odorless. You can use kitty litter that has no odors and you know, you think about it, it just kind of makes sense with all the hyperallergenic stuff and all that's going around. You know, you can get kitty litter that's just minerals is all it is. And oil dry is the same thing. They're not going to lemon scent oil dry, you know, as long as it's like, as long as it doesn't contain any kind of chemicals or odorants, which it usually does not, because all you're using it for is just to absorb the liquid oil. And you'd be surprised how good that stuff works, because it'll like suck it out of the concrete if you leave it there long enough. You know, it's really absorbent. So yeah, you can totally put that down there. A lot of guys do. Don't go too heavy with it, and make sure you get it out as soon as you're done cooking. Like, dump it out, because I think it'll just sit in there and get hard if you leave it in there too long.
Right.
You know, but shop vac, that's what a lot of guys do. They'll just shop vac it out, you know. It's pretty cool.
So is it anything like these TV commercials when you have the kitty litter that you go in there with like a sifter, a spoon sifter, and you just sift out the lumps?
I suppose you could. I've never done it personally. I know some guys that have. I would just personally just throw it away. I think
Right.
that's where I would be headed, but I don't know. But you still have to clean off the baffle plate. You know, I'm thinking in a Super 55 or one of the drum smokers that I've built, you still got some kind of baffle, heat shield in there. You got your intakes that might have got some junk up in there, things like that. Your cooking grate. So you still got to scrape all that. But what it does do well is it takes care of a lot of the liquid. These competition guys, I don't know if, well, I know Eric does, but everybody that like heavily injects and brines and all of this stuff, you're going to wind up with a ton of liquid that's not going to boil off because it's going to get down below the charcoal basket in a drum. And that's where you wind up with this issue needing that kitty litter. Whereas on the smoke slinger, I don't know how many, I know Dave's in here, David Suss, but Bob McKinley's in here too. What's up, Bob? But anyway, I'm not sure that many people have ever had anything drain out of their smoke slinger. It pretty much all just vaporizes, you know, or builds up on the tuning plates and kind of goes away. So I never really had a need for any kind of absorbent material
Right.
in there.
And then, of course, with the smoke slinger, there is a drain right there at the bottom. I found out that by simply getting a disposable half-size catering pan, I don't know what you want to call that. It's a half pan, and putting that right underneath, that any of the grease that comes down, if in the event it was to pool into the center, it would just drip out of there. But I also found that it was very useful yesterday in the morning after I was had finished up with one of the cooks. I just wanted to clean it up before I was moving over to play with the plancha. That some of the residual charcoal ash, I could just kind of push to the middle. It would fall right through the hole and into the pan. It was very easy to clean. When I was done, completely, done at the end of the day, before I packed it up and had any type of argument with my wife about the mess I made, that's when I pulled out the shop vac and I made sure full suction, we got anything that was in there out of there. It was extremely useful. But again, I made sure that the inside was once again coated with PAM after I cleaned it out. And I recommend, just like you had mentioned, that if you use any type of water, like we were talking about with the power washer, that you do light a small fire simply to dry your pit out before you spray it down with an oil. Because if you put it away wet, you're asking for rust. You're asking for that metal to oxidize. So it is necessary. And I think you'd agree that you want to be able to dry the pit out, and heat is the best way to do it. And then coat it with that oil and maybe heat it up one more time, just so that that oil is able to adhere to all the sides and, of course, not drip down, and put it away seasoned.
Yeah. And this is where the weed burner comes in. You could actually just use the weed burner to dry the inside of your pit out if you want. Of course, if it's a pretty paint job on the outside, I may not do that because you might get a little too hot in one spot, brown your paint, maybe building a fire in the pit and running it for an hour, and then reseasoning, because you're going to need to reseason it anyway. Right. At that point, even with some PAM, if you go for it there. There was another question here from Hojo about degreaser. You see it there?
I saw it a little bit earlier, and I was wondering, when he was talking about the degreaser, are we talking about those chemical degreasers that have the caustic acid in it, or are we talking about something that's a little bit more food safe? That well, I guess maybe you'd find that as well as like at a Restaurant Depot or a Costco or a Sam's Club. I know Sam's Club sells an excellent stainless steel cleaner. Yeah,
just oven cleaner works really good. Yeah, so like Zep makes a really good one. ZEP, I get that at Menards, is what I go get. If you can't get that, I know there is they're usually in an aerosol cans, the one I use. This little squirt bottle of purple degreaser can work good, but I don't think it's as effective as oven cleaner for some reason, because oven cleaner is designed to like take off the cheese that melted and dripped out and got on the bottom of the pan down there where the burner's at and turned into a rock. That's what the oven cleaner is designed to break down. If you get that and then scrape a little bit, it's gone. Yeah, no problem. The only problem I ever had is when I'm doing bingo or cleaning bingo or some other big pit, you got to have like 4 or 5 cans of that stuff, like to really do a difference on your cooking grates, so it just kind of depends what my mood is at the moment. If I'm using that stuff though, I usually go for the can of Zep, or I think there's a 2-pack at Sam's. The one thing I'll urge caution is if you're a drum smoker guy and you use like Rust-Oleum high heat paint or some kind of Rust-Oleum direct to metal enamel paint, like I always do when I'm painting, because I hate to paint. That stuff, that oven cleaner from Sam's will pull it right off. So you got to be careful.
Yeah.
With that. Don't hit your paint. But if you're like, test a spot, like they say on the bottle usually. So
I find that those degreasers are wonderful for, like you were mentioning, getting the cheese, getting some of the other things off. I especially with the round bar, it's a lot easier to use a wire brush or to use something that has a bristle to it. But when it comes to expanded metal, it's already quite sharp the way that it is. How do you, what's the best way if you're using a brush to be able to clean expanded metal?
So I prefer a nylon heavy, like nylon bristle brush. But what I'm thinking is like a push broom for doing concrete, like rough concrete. You get those rough push brooms. If you can get something that's not that long of a bristle, shorter, which I found one at Menards here the other day that I can put on a pole. The reason I say nylon is because if you use like a regular wire brush that's got like stainless steel bristles or something, which I've used a bunch of times, those bristles pop out and they're so small and hard to see. And if you don't get them all, like if for some reason you miss one, that could get in somebody's food. And so that's why I tend to not do that. I have used some stainless steel brushes whenever I'm in a spot that for some reason, I just can't get it clean. I'll use that. Or I'll even get the cup brush on the grinder, which has got like a braided wire. It's like braided or spun. So it's not like individual bristles. And I'll put that on the Metabo and go in there and go after it if it's like bad enough. But rarely ever do I have to do that. So I'll use those nylon bristle brushes. If you keep up with it, you'll have no problems. But those bristles will get down inside that expanded as you're pushing, and you just got to do both sides and then follow it up with the power washer and you're clean. Expanded metal sucks to clean. That's the funniest thing. It's deemed as high quality to people. What they don't know is like 20 years ago or whatever, 18 years ago, however long I've been building pits. Let me rewind that. 2007 was today. So yeah, almost 18 years. We used expanded metal because we were too lazy to make bar grates. That's why we used expanded metal. And it was cheaper because by the time I paid somebody to sit there and weld every little bar, it was just easier to shear out some expanded, slap it in the thing, done, move on. Expanded metal has just been used so long that everyone is just conditioned. Why doesn't it have expanded metal? It's not because it's great. It's because it's cheap, but it's also sharp. And so that's the issue with it. So that's why the Smoke Slinger brand, we're moving away from that as fast as we can, if we possibly can, to round bar. But
when you mentioned earlier about using a brush that you might use on concrete on the outside, there's a brush that we use in pizza ovens, wood-fired pizza ovens, coal-fired pizza ovens, where on one side it has a scraper, and on the other side it has pieces of metal. They probably about an 1/8-inch thick piece of metal. And they're in there as the bristles. And we use that to be able to scrub the fire brick that's at the bottom. Or if it's not fire brick, then it's the tiles that are in the bottom. So that as we're moving the wood from one side of our pizza oven to the other, from a hot spot to a cool spot, and then putting our dough on there, at the same point, as you know, you've got all of that ash that's in there. So we're constantly scraping and scraping and scraping. I would think that a brush like that would probably be beneficial for cleaning the inside of a barbecue pit, of an offset pit. Whether you've got a backyard pit at 94 gallons, up to your 250s, 500s, even 1,000-gallon pits that you can get in there and really be able to work all the walls and work all the other areas. And those fireboxes, it's got to be detrimental to the inside of that firebox because of the heat, because of the ash, that a lot of those little chunks and pieces get stuck to the wall, and you want to be able to knock them off as best as possible. Yeah, another thing that comes to mind, and I've recently seen this, and this is really for the backyard barbecue fanatic, or even those that are used to round bar on whatever type of cooker they're using currently. It uses, and you mentioned this at the beginning, steam. There's a pad that's on the end of your brush head. You dip it in water, and as long as your grates are raging hot, you just go over it, and it steams whatever gunk that's on that round bar right off. It seems to work fairly well. I have seen, because of heat, discoloration of the bars. It won't get that off. You almost get like a bluing, a purplish color, a haze that shows up on there. So it's like a weird rainbow color that tends to stick in the bluish purplish range. But it does a magnificent job of knocking everything off and keeping them clean. And then I've heard other people, I guess this is really when we're dealing with stainless, that you spray the inside of the cover to your barbecue and then close it, and it helps to clean the stainless lid inside of your barbecue. When you spoke earlier in the conversation about steaming, was that one of the modalities that you were speaking of?
Yes. You got to get your pit over 300 degrees for it to work, because it's got to be pretty fast. If your cooker is like 250, 240, something like that, it's not going to vaporize fast enough. But if you can run your pit over 300 degrees for an extended period of time, getting up to the point where you're ready to mist it in, and then the finer you can mist the like atomize the water going in, like a sprayer on a water hose, it's got like multiple streams, is too much. It needs to be like misted in there, almost like a Windex kind of bottle, or we used to say bottle, But if you could get in there with one of those, the problem is you got to be able to pull that trigger really fast. So a bug sprayer, a good clean bug sprayer bottle might be better. But you want to hurry up and get your spot, whatever you're going to do, and then shut the lid as fast as you can. And then that steam is just working in there, no different than any kind of a steam cleaner or anything else. And the steam is so hot. That's what the deal is that water is 212 degrees, but whenever it finally vaporizes, it can superheat, and that's when it expands and gets super hot. It'll get as hot as you want it to get, and that steam can release all of that grease and stuff off the wall. It'll get as hot as the airstream is in your pit. If you're running 300 degrees, your air is probably close to 700, 600 degrees coming in there, and then it at least that hot as it flashes, and that'll help release all that grease and stuff off the wall, which is really good.
You brought to mind, I guess something that I have here. Again, we use this when I was doing the barbecue competitions. Rather than the sprayer where you keep pulling it with the trigger, the hog sprayers, things that are available at places like Tractor Supply, where you pump it at the top with whatever liquid you have, right? And you pump it all the air in.
Bug sprayer.
You just hold it. That's it. And just spray. Go for it. That way you're not working out that trigger finger.
Yeah. That's what I was calling a bug sprayer, but yeah. Around here they're for bugs.
Oh, is it? It sounds like it's time to crack open a cold one.
You're too
I gotta
late.
get this close to the mic so that we get that sound for all the listeners.
This one got shook up. Ooh. Now I got IPA all over the floor.
I'm just having an ice cold, refreshing Miller latte.
At least I'm in my,
not as fancy as you are.
At least I'm in my basement, so I can wipe that up here in a minute. But anyway, oh yeah. So there you go. Yeah, that's what I do is the steaming thing, and I think I even show that in that video. When you steam like that, everything just runs right down. It's pretty cool to watch it happen. There was another question in here a minute ago about birds. I wanted to bring up smokestacks too. Hojo asked, anyone ever have any birds or four-legged friends take up residence in the smokestack? I've never had that happen personally, but I keep my smokestack damper closed. So have you ever seen anything like that?
Oh, yeah, we've had smoked quail in the past. Sure.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So with pits, when you start to get up there in a collection of pits, what happens is there's times that you don't use that pit as often as and first when you bought it, you intended to use it, because we're always getting a new toy in. Some of the older toys tend to sit out there. They get moved around. We put them out there in the field. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And animals will find their way in. But when you're dealing with birds that build a nest, one of the best ways to get them out there is you just
build
simply
a fire.
That's it. You light the fire and they find a new home.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to bring that up, though, what I have had happen, we were talking about flue fires and flues earlier in the conversation from a firefighter's perspective.
Sure.
And whenever you burn wood that is either A, been soaked, or B, is too green, it's not seasoned properly, you're going to get a lot of water vapor and stuff in the air. Plus, you're going to have already all the particulate that's in the airstream. The things you smell is particulate. That's what it is. That's why you can smell them. So there's all kinds of other things in the airstream while it's leaving the firebox going into your pit. And if your wood is green, it's going to be likely that you're going to be suffering to get your pit temp up. So when your air mass is not hot enough, that water vapor that is vaporized in the airstream, as the airstream cools down in your smokestack, you may not see moisture inside the cook chamber, but in the smokestack, it'll cool off a lot faster as it goes up. And so you'll have condensation forming inside the smokestack. And if you ever saw that black, like that black water, or whatever it is, it's just really nasty film that you see in there. That's what's happening. You're getting a soot buildup inside your smokestack. And I've literally seen guys bring me pits that weren't working, used to run like crazy for a couple, 3-4 years, whatever. Of course, they never cleaned them. I'm thinking of one particular pit. They never cleaned them, and probably the smokestack was too small to begin with. But when it got back to me, instead of it being a 4-inch smokestack, believe it or not, it was like 1.5 inches.
Wow. Because
it just had that much buildup, and it was the full length of that stack. It like, I don't know how it does it, but somehow in that airstream, there's enough garbage in that airstream that's condensing, like the EPA has people in California do this thing called method 9 testing, which is opacity. And so we can literally look at the color of the smoke, and we can tell you whether or not your airstream is clean enough, right? And so like all the charcoal plants have to do it, a bunch of places like that. And when you drive by and you see this big smokestack that's just like blowing a bunch of white smoke out of it, that's not actually smoke, that's steam.
Correct.
And they're using a thing called a scrubber is what they're using. And they use that water to trap all of the stuff from going out the smokestack, and it scrubs it and it condenses and it goes down into a containment of some kind where they can dispose of it safely. And that's what happens with your smoker a lot of times is it's the same thing, especially if you have a water pan in your smoker. If you have a water pan in your smoker or something like that, you're making it worse. The steam gets in your air and it's got to condense somewhere. Right. Like as the airstream cools down, we're going to start losing all that moisture. It's got to go somewhere. Anything that's built up will collect along the sides of the whatever is condensing the water.
You just went down an interesting pathway when it came to reading smoke. There's courses that firefighters take and being able to identify when we pull up to a structure fire, a residential fire, to be able to know just based upon the smoke what conditions we're about to walk into. And you're right. If we see white smoke, that means that fire is on its way out. It means that there's water that's hitting the fire. But if we see that chalky brown smoke, this fire is about to roll. it's about to, that room can very easily, if we're coming in or we see it through the windows, it's about to flash over, especially when you see the twinkling. And I know I'm getting a little bit off from where we are with cleaning pits. However, it's very relevant to knowing that if you're looking at your smokestack and you see black smoke coming out, that's an easy way to be able to identify you've got a grease fire without ever opening up your smoke lid to your smoke chamber. However, if you're seeing white smoke coming out somewhere along the line, and I'm glad you brought that up, the water pan, there's a good chance that water got onto the charcoal or onto somehow into your cook chamber. Or if you're using, I'm going to use for this example, a Super 55 drum, you had a water pan in there and the water pan somehow fell down or leaked right onto your charcoal. And what you're seeing coming out is steam. That fire is going out. Now,
it's smoldering.
Correct.
That's what we're seeing with white smoke is smoldering.
That's correct.
And the other thing is you can tell if you're using a stick burner, you can tell if your wood is wet because out the end grain, like you got the length of the log, out the end of it where you can see all the ring stuff out the end of the wood, it'll actually be boiling the sap. And the sap will be foamy coming out the end of that log. When you see that, your wood is too wet. Right. It should not have that happening. So what I do is I preheat my wood is what I do to prevent that. And if you preheat your wood, you'll give it a chance to just naturally evaporate a lot of that. It'll light a lot faster and it'll burn a lot cleaner. Especially if you're like me and you cut your own wood and you run out because you're too lazy to go cut wood. And so you hurry up and cut a whole bunch of wood and then you got to cook. And then you wind up having to dry your wood in the oven or something. I don't do that, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we have to do a cook the day before just to dry our wood so that we have dry wood the next day to cook with. I've done that. But now I've got a Vantco warmer in the garage that my buddy Aaron hooked me up with. And I just set that thing for 135, 140, and I just put all my wood in that thing and just let it rock and let it have a good 3 hours of cooking in there. You'll see moisture on the window because it's got a plexiglass window in it. Great way. I got that tip from Jeremy Yoder. He did a video, by the way, on Mad Scientist Barbecue where he took wood and he put it in his warmer, his Vivor warmer or whatever, and he left for 2 weeks and came back and they tried to cook with it. And it was the video was very educational. It was pretty cool. And then I was like, I've been doing it wrong my whole life. We got a pellet cooker. We got another thing. Let's get our wood hot.
Right.
So we can cook on the stick burner easier.
It makes sense. Somebody had just texted me because we were talking about creosote and chimneys. In fact, even Carlton here in our chat had just thrown the word creosote. So someone just texted me here and was asking the question, can you use one of those cleaning logs for creosote that you find at your big box stores inside the firebox of your offset in order to eliminate the creosote that would build up inside your cook chamber and inside your chimney? And you know what? That even touches upon the point here where Hojo Barbecue is asking the same question. What's the best way to clean the inside of the smokestack? So have you ever seen these logs that go into your fireplace in your home to be able to clean out? Yeah. So they
use kerosene and newspapers here where I'm at.
Did you use kerosene and newspapers?
My grandpa always did. Scared me to death. Flames shooting out the smokestack.
That's correct. Yeah. But there's a log. I've seen this thing before. I don't remember the name of the company that has this. And you find this at a lot of the big box stores. Sometimes the grocery stores have them as well. You put the log into the chimney in your fireplace, and it's supposed to be able to burn up and clean out the creosote. I don't know if this is a food safe type of item that you can put into the firebox of an offset to be able to do the same.
Well, the difference is that your wood furnace or your fireplace is direct vented out of the firebox.
Right.
That's the difference. So you're going to have super hot air right there. And, it's going to be direct venting. in our case, like the firebox on an offset smoker is offset away from the smokestack. So I don't know that it would work the same. I would be interested to learn more about this, though. I've never seen that. Of course, I don't burn wood for heat, so that's
Right.
probably why. But you know, as far as that goes, the best way to clean your stack is just to clean it frequently and use some kind of a brush if you can. I know that a lot of these barbecue restaurants these days, they don't want the folding stack so that they can move their pit around and stuff. They want the folding stack so they can fold it down. They can clean it easy with the big brush.
That makes sense.
Like a chimney sweep brush. You know, that's what I'm starting to hear. But the chimney sweep brush has usually got like some kind of resin beads on the outside of the bristles.
Right.
If you get a really good one, and it'll actually like hone and clean a little bit. Oh, here 106 Roadie said Duralog must be what it is, the product.
And another name is the CSL, the Creote Sweeping Log. Just pulled it up here because I was kind of curious about it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to learn more about it. I've never heard of it before. That's kind of a cool idea. But as far as the way that I clean stacks is I usually use a just one of those brushes or something like that, or I'll scrape it with like a piece of strap, like steel strap or something, because I got that laying around. You know, I got it out on the steel rack. You know, I'll just take it and just take a piece and jab down in there. But I do it frequently enough with the power washer that I really don't have to deal with that much. Especially if you make sure your wood's dry when you put it on the pit and clean your pit frequently.
Right.
So that's the catch, is like we get done cooking. We just worked our butt off and we're tired. Like I cooked 14 hours yesterday on that video and I didn't even care that the stuff was not rendered all the way. I was done. I want to go to bed, you know. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? We just don't want to go out there and clean the pit. So we're going to have to do it another day. We're going to have to wait till it's warm again or fire the pit up. You know, there's all that going on. I like it here. Bob McKinley said, as bad as it sounds, bullet brush work? Absolutely. Yep. It would work fine. You just got to have a long enough pole to stick it down in there. You know, you could stick it inside a piece of PVC pipe and duct tape it. That's what Red Green would do. You know what Red Green Show is?
I don't know the Red Green Show.
What?
No,
dude.
What is the Red Green Show? It sounds like it's like the red light, green light type of
thing.
Keep
your stick on the ice.
Where's it from?
Dude, I'm not even going to tell you. That's your assignment for tonight.
The Red Green Show.
You got to learn about the Red Green Show. You'll wreck your rest of your life, man. The BBQ is one of my favorite episodes. The BBQ.
What about you
the car that drives itself is a great one too. Go ahead.
You mentioned using a long pole or something to be able to clean out the chimney. What about these things that they have for the dryer vents that you attach to your cordless cordless drill, and you get in there and it on one end it's spinning, it goes all the way around. So I'm thinking whether you have a 4-inch chimney, 5-inch chimney, 6-inch, well, 6-inch might be a little excessive, but at least up to a 5-inch chimney, you can get in there and work it up and down to be able to pull the stuff out. And obviously, whatever falls down into the smoke collector area, you're able to open up your pit, pull back your grates, and be able to scoop out of there. Again, back to the shop vac, suck it all out of there.
Yep, it's exactly. Yeah. And this is an interesting thought here too. You know, with these new offset designs that we do, you're cooking with your damper closed halfway at least most of the time on these offsets to give it that restriction at the exit of the stack, so you get the velocity for your draw, but you don't lose all the volume in your chamber. If you learn more about all that, there's a whole engineering course on Smoker Builder U about pit engineering. But anyway, talking about that actually encourages the volume of air to not move as much volume out with our draw, because draw is velocity, not volume. So then you wind up, if your wood is wet, you're going to have more buildup from that condensation inside the stack, especially if you're cooking at lower temperatures. Like I'm thinking about the bar A method. Everybody's heard about that these days, where they're cooking with that. The way they do it, low and slow brisket, starting out like a 180 is what they're doing for so many hours, and running that pit like that on hyper loaded with fuel for 5 hours, 6 hours, whatever. I would be very curious how that affects the cleanliness of the stack, running your pit like that, because I think the inside of your pit even gets quite a bit of that on there, which you were talking about earlier, is that, like you got to be able to get up in there and clean the lid off the inside of your offset. Like I can't tell you how many times I've peeked up inside of somebody's offset and there's like all this flaky stuff hanging from inside where the air's been running along the top up there, and it's all crispy crittered and dried, and it's just like ash, whatever was in the airstream, flaky up there. It's not oily like airborne grease that's floating around in there. And so you got to scrub that with a brush, a power washer, or something like that, and get all that off there, or it's going to land in your food as you're cooking. That's what the black flakes are on your brisket. That you're like, where did that come from?
I can't tell you how many times I've been to people's homes, and this is, you have to understand that the prudent individual, the average person, thinks that is black paint on the inside that's peeling off from inside their cooker because they overfired it. And I've had to explain to people, before you cook anything, before we do anything today, and this is, neighbors and friends, you need to scrape all that out. That's not paint. We're not scraping the paint from inside. That's all built up, like you used the word earlier, particulates. All of that is going to end up in your food. That's left over from previous cooks that just built up and built up and built up. We've got to get all that scaling off before you do anything else today. Let's just spend a half hour, scrape it down, wipe it down, and then we can start fresh.
And so here's the catch. This is the clinker. The cleaner your pit is, the better your barbecue will be. Every time. Consistency is the key. So like in competition barbecue, that's why you see these guys taking their drums apart in their driveways, heavy oven degreaser on everything, oven cleaner, power washing it down, getting it all clean, because at that point, now they're not depending on the last cook to flavor the new cook. I laugh about that, but it's just, to me, it's just like, ding. Okay. Well, I'm trying so hard to make my best barbecue, I should start with a level playing field and like have the same shot every time for myself. So that's another reason to clean your pit. Something else though that Eric asked earlier in the conversation, Canned Meats Barbecue team. He was asking about how to get rid of the rust that's on the expanded metal. So part of this cleaning process is the rust. And first of all, let's discuss like, what rust should I be worried about? Is all rust bad, right? So in my opinion, surface rust is not a problem. Like if you watch the video that I published last week on the Smoke Slinger YouTube channel with an all new Liberty 94, I'm so proud of that pit. Aren't you proud of that pit?
I certainly am. I love that pit.
I got one. You got one too, right?
I have one.
So true story. We cooked on one of the pre-production models in Miami, and Dustin sent an extra set of grates because he wasn't sure that the round bar cooking grates were going to be, air quotes, kosher or not. And so he sent an extra set of grates. We wound up being able to use the round bar cooking grates. I threw the other ones in the bed of my truck, hauled them all the way home from Florida in the pouring down rain. Then they got snowed on and iced on and everything else in the bed of my truck. Then I drove down to Texas, worked with Dustin, and wound up picking up that pit. And I was like, oh, dude, I already got some cooking grates. So they were all surface rusty. My grates were. I didn't even realize it until I was doing the video. And then I looked inside. That. Also, it rained all the way home. So that pit was a rust ball when I got home, right? So I had to clean that rust off, the surface rust off. That's why it was so beautiful. That black, that satin black finish on that mill scale was because I cleaned it with a nylon brush. But anyway, surface rust doesn't hurt anything at all. It's totally okay to cook right on it. The only time rust is a bad thing is when it's going to flake off and get in your food. That's when we get into that delamination, when things they start to peel apart like that. Anyway, so whenever you see that, if you really want it to be cleaned off, it's totally okay to clean it off. It's a pain in the rear. I don't think it's worth all the effort. If you notice in the video, I just sprayed Pam on it and it was gone. Instantly disappeared.
Right.
So it's totally okay. Don't freak out about surface rust. So when you're cleaning your cooking grates, you power wash everything. It's going to flash rust when the water dries out. It's nature. That's what's going to happen. Don't worry about it. Just like oil it. You're good to go. It's an indicator that it's clean if it does that. And there's no oil buildup on it from the last nasty cook you did.
I tell people all the time, do not take sandpaper and think you're going to sand that off. That's not ferrous oxide where you're getting that orange rust on your food or on your hands. It's just surface rust. Once you hit it with a little bit of oil, the same way that you would with a cast iron pan, it all goes away.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you need to get that little bit of oranging off, take a paper towel, rub it down, then put some oil onto a fresh piece of paper towel and put that on, and you'll see you'll clean it right up. And you'll get that nice luster, that nice sheen back on, especially when you heat it up. Because we've discussed a lot about cleaning the inside of the pit. But when it comes to the outside of the pit, you need to maintain that just as much, especially for those that are used to leaving a pit outside in 4 weather seasons, or they just simply throw a tarp over the top and they leave it there for the winter time. Well, guess what, folks? When you take that tarp off at the end of the winter and you're ready to start cooking in the spring, that metal still had the opportunity to be able to get a little bit of humidity underneath, and that starts to build up. You have the sun coming down. Those UV rays are creating almost a greenhouse effect on the inside, and you're bound to get a little bit of rust. So you must get back out there, season the outside of that pit, rub it down, clean it up so that you're able to maintain that beautiful exterior look. Not just for guys like you and I who go on camera and show these things off, but for those that are going to have friends, family, neighbors over, and they want to, when they're looking at it, the first thing they see, the first thing anybody sees before you put anything on there is the state of your cooker. And that speaks a lot about the maintenance and the care that you're going to put to the inside of your cooker. So it's just, one thing tends to go with the other.
Yeah. As far as that goes, like that's why I like the oil finish on the outside so much, is because it's so easy to get it back to zero. And as a matter of fact, when you oil your pit instead of painting it, well, I say that, like, I never paint anything. I'm colorblind. I hate paint. I don't want to put the extra effort into it. I can wipe that thing down with oil and it's going to look beautiful. So Bingo has been sitting outside since I can't even remember when. When I did the video, you saw how rusty it is. If you watch the Season Your Pit video, I still haven't oiled the outside of Bingo since that video. So it looks even better now than it did before. Now, that surface rust like that, though, that's what builds that patina. So people use muriatic acid or some kind of, like from Jack's Chemical, you can get a lot of different bluing and blacking and different kinds of compounds that create that look, right? So that patina is highly sought after to get a good patina on something and get it. So one of my favorite pictures of Bingo, like I did all of that. If you ever watch the Smoker Builder YouTube channel far enough back when I started that build, I did a short or a video about how to get rid of the paint and everything off your propane tank without sandblasting, because I hate sandblasting, but I want to preserve the mill scale look. And so mill scale is that dark coating that's on the outside of the steel. And once that's off, it's shiny and bright. And so when you sandblast, you're going to get rid of all of that, and you're going to have this pitted white metal finish, and it just looks like crap. The only thing you can do with it is paint it. And so I didn't want that. So I went to all the trouble to get down to that mill scale so that I could preserve that color. And then also I wanted to have some kind of tiger stripey looking, like rusty finish on that. That way, when I hit it with the oil, it would pop. That's what boiled linseed oil does. It just has this really cool look to it that you can't duplicate any other way. So I did all that, and then I let it sit outside with 0 coats of oil for, like, I don't know, a year, something like that, cooking on it and everything else. And then right before we went and cooked the NFL draft up in when it was in Kansas City, I got out there, Aaron and I did, and we oiled that thing up, and man, it looks good. If you want to see a picture of Bingo, go to the Smoker Builder Facebook page and look at my profile picture. That's one of my favorite pictures of Bingo, because that patina really came alive. Well, it's better now than it's ever been. So whenever I do go out there and oil that thing down, it's going to be a showpiece. I'm super excited about that. Of course, I kind of have always been around old cars and, the Rat Fink thing and hot rods and stuff like that. So I'm into that. But that natural steel, like the story that it tells, that's what it's all about. And so as you cook on your pit, you're going to be doing that to your pit as well. The grease that drips down the front, that makes that nice little streak down the front across the logo, the Smoke Slinger logo, that brown weird that happens from the firebox door that comes up. All of that tells stories about all your cooks and how long you've been cooking on this pit and stuff like that. Lean in. It's cool. The big gouge when you hit it with the forklift and it's got this around the front of it, that tells a story. Lean in. That's what Aaron tells me. Lean in. Anyway, that's the pit builder in me.
Unbelievable. My wife tells me time and time again that she has no problem cleaning the dishes, doing the laundry, cleaning the floors, cleaning up after the kids. But the one thing she's not going to do is clean my pits. That's it. That's where she draws the line. She refuses to get out there and start scrubbing the pit. So that's on me. I have to take care of that. But then again, I'm the one in the house that does all that type of cooking. And we used to have this agreement that I do the cooking, she does the cleaning, and she has no problem cleaning the pans and cleaning the dishes and cleaning up after me around the stove. But she's not touching any one of these 800-pound pits. That's that.
So now talking about cleaning the outside real quick, we might as well hit on that.
Sure.
So if you in fact do find, like if you do oil your pit, or if you have a black painted pit that the paint is starting to wear off, if you want to do this one little trick, it's basically what's called feather edging is what it's called. You take something that's like really fine grit. You don't want to get too thick or too coarse because you're going to be removing material that you may not want to be removing. So like a 400 grit sandpaper, 240 grit sandpaper, nylon brush, something like that. But if you get down into scouring pads and like Brillo pads or those green Scotch-Brite pads, those can remove quite a bit of material, and you'll wind up with streaking that happens, or material that if you've got a rust streak, where usually what causes it on the outside of a pit is when you had like this brisket that you pulled off to wrap and it was juicy and rendering and all that seasonings. The seasonings are very acidic. And so when that salt and those seasonings get on there and that grease and they run down, that's what you're trying to deal with whenever you get that rusty stuff. And so if you take like a nylon coarse bristle brush, it'll remove that without removing what's underneath of it, right? So you just got to be careful and just be gentle with it. Little nylon brush, some kind of a other, like even just a microfiber towel sometimes is enough abrasion to clean some of that off and smooth it out. And then you can actually take and oil it and you won't even know a difference. And if you want to get that back from like bare metal or something like that, what you can do is mix in a little bit of graphite or something with your oil, and then that'll help you get that color back. Something like that. That's a great way to fake it out. In the shop, we do what's called hot bluing, which we'll take a torch and a needle and we'll heat up that spot like where a weld is or something we ground off. We'll heat and heat and heat and heat and heat and get it really red. and then we'll take that oil and hit it on the oil on there, and that'll just instantly, like, it'll take that color back. It'll get black or get darker.
Interesting.
Then we can blend that, like I'm saying, with like a towel or something to get that color back.
What about using those magic erasers? I know that they're still fairly
they were
new.
great.
Yeah,
They're magic.
they are.
They clean everything.
Oh yeah. They don't. Is there any negative effects to using that?
No.
Over, say, like the logos and the emblems that we have on our pits.
My elbow hurts. That's the only thing I can think of from scrubbing sometimes. But no, there's no negative effects other than that. They work great. I saw that you did that, by the way. I saw your post about that, I think, somewhere, or a text. I can't remember.
I think it was it was one of our people from the Smoke Slinger group who recently purchased a mini Smoke Slinger, and with that he's also getting himself a full size, and with that he's also most likely getting himself something else.
I remember now. Yeah. He's
lined up for the trifecta, or as I call it.
He's got a barbecue problem.
He's going for the holy trinity of Smoke Slinger smokers.
Yeah,
so he recently got himself a mini, and he was making himself Texas Twinkies. And during the cleanup process, they are awesome. During his cleanup process, he pulled out the magic eraser, and I'm sure his wife was thrilled to find out that there's one less in the house now, and used it to clean the exterior of his mini Smoke Slinger. And I saw that going from the prior look where the Smoke Slinger logo had a good amount of what's the political word, schmutz on it, and then he goes over it, and suddenly there it is, brand new and cleaned again.
It looked brand new. I couldn't believe it.
Letter was done excellently done. The way he cleaned it up.
Yeah, it looked like day one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. By the way, if you don't know about it, we have a free Facebook group. You'll see a bunch of these guys in here on that group cooking on their cookers and stuff like that. That group is awesome. I've been in a lot of Facebook groups. I used to own a barbecue forum, one of the big 3 barbecue forums, big 4. And I've never been in a group I've been in some really cool groups, but I've never been in a group like the Smoke Slinger Pit Owners group. It's really cool. Them guys in there are absolutely nuts when it comes to barbecue, and they cook constantly, and they're throwing down some really great food. So it's a great group. If you guys aren't a member already, we'd invite you over. On Facebook, it's called the Smoke Slinger Pit Owners Group. Carlton's in there. Carlton's on Team Smoke Slinger there. He's a pro staffer, by the way.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
great to have him here with us
Carlton
tonight.
in here. And speaking of that, if for any reason you're interested in Smoke Slinger brand of products, don't be afraid to go over to smokeslinger.com, fill out the little form. You're going to get on the phone with Dave, most likely, but possibly me. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you have. We enjoy talking on the phone about barbecue. We love it. And we want to make sure that your barbecue journey is as successful as you hope it is. Can I pimp out one more thing here?
Please do.
We've got a free fire management online course. If you are new to barbecue and you are just trying to figure out the basics, like you maybe don't have like your own timeline. You maybe don't understand some of the things that Dave and I are talking about when it comes to managing a fire coal bed, how big it should be, wood splits, wood identification, things like that. Go to smokerbuilder.com, smokerbuilderu.com. Once you sign up, it's free to join. There's no strings attached. Once you sign up, you're going to see another group of guys that are crazy about barbecue. These guys like to build pits and run pits, but there's some free, there is a free fire management online course. You can go in there and take that. We've got new modules that we'll be adding pretty soon, but there's 4 different kinds of pits in there that you can learn how to run. And also there's some barbecue pit engineering stuff in there and some other courses coming soon as well. So appreciate you guys looking into that. Anything you want to add, Dave?
One more key event coming up, not this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Next weekend, Saturday, March 8th, 2025, Is it Canton, Texas, or
Yep,
are we going?
Canton,
It
Texas.
is.
Yep.
We are going to have the
Dave spent a
second.
stupid amount of money on food. I don't know if his wife wants me to say it, if he wants
No,
his
we're
wife
not
to hear
going to
that.
mention that. We're not even going to get close to that because this is recorded, and that will. I'll be in big trouble.
I'm just kidding.
Let's just say that I just had my birthday this weekend. Frank has
Yeah.
his birthday coming up this
Yep.
week coming up. We're going to have the Smoke Slinger barbecue meetup / Dave and Frank birthday party. What better than to get together with us two, party with BBQ Nerds. We've got beef on the menu. We've got pork on the menu. There might be lamb. I'm sure that there's other types of proteins that, a little more risque. Some stuff that could be organ meat.
Oh man,
Many different preparations of
I think I got
your
that
traditional
stuff.
barbecue foods. Some other ones that are native to other parts of the Americas, South America, North America, Central America. We may see some stuff that comes up from other continents around the world. I believe that we're going to hit just about every food group and multiple different types of cooking styles, from direct heat to indirect to offset cooking, low and slow, hot and fast, rotisserie, planches, multiple cookers.
Cajun.
One of the greatest things about this is that we're getting back to that primitive manly man, raw fire. There's no electricity. There's no you plug it in, set it in, forget it type of cook. You have to be there to maintain it, to keep the fire going, whether it be putting a stick in every 45 minutes or shoveling coal in. We invite you to do so. I'd like to take a nap at some point. So please, if at 3
dig in
o'clock
and
in the
help
morning, you say to yourself, I see this huge bonfire going on over there, and I'd like to shovel some coal. I invite you to do it, please. I'd like to go to bed at some point.
Something I just was thinking of is El Presidente Dustin isn't watching right now. He's the guy in he is Smoke Slinger.
Yes.
And I'm not entirely sure, but something tells me he might be working on something that we don't know about that might show up there too. You never know. I mean, I know he went off the radar for a day or two last week. So, so anyway, we don't know. I know he sent me drawings of stuff. I don't know. It may not happen, but last time it did.
There was a phone call came in earlier today. He was on his way over there to go deal with some different air gases and other types of steels, things that I guess you need different types of gases and different types of metals to do what he's about, or he's not about to do, but he's looking into it.
Oh my gosh. Right on, man. Well, anyway, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get down there. I had a good time last time. I go there tired. I come home tired because I stay there and I have fun and I do all the stuff I want to do. And the city park was pretty good, man. It was a good time at that place.
Yes, it was.
It was a righteous place, man. I hope we get the same spot, but because they don't do the whole reservation thing. He's first come, first serve, but we'll see. We get there early enough and we stay there all night. Nobody can do nothing to us.
We're looking into talking with the municipality, possibly a donation being made in order to secure a space for an overnight cook.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. But we have a plan B too. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I'm bringing the stuff I got down there. I'll bring my full size. I'll bring my Liberty 94. Dustin will have his full size down there and planches. Like, we'll have plenty of pits to run, so it'll be a good time.
Yeah, I want people to be able to, for those that already own one, we'd love to have you there. If you don't have one, it's a great opportunity to be able to touch it, feel it, use it. From what I understand,
hang out
there'll
with
be
the community.
Mini, there'll be a full size, there'll be a Liberty 94. What better place to be able to demo units than do it live, cook, try it out, know what the flavors are like, play around with the air intakes, play around with the vents. Find out what works for you. We're here to work with you hands-on, and eat. That's what we do. We love to eat.
Yeah, we do. Right on. Well, hey guys, I really appreciate you watching. Every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time, you can join us here, the BBQ Nerds, on the BBQ Nerds Podcast on YouTube at Real Meat Stick or YouTube at Smokeslinger Pits, or you can join us on the Facebook page at Smokeslinger Pits. And we go live every week. And then eventually, at some point, once I get around to it, I try to get it all edited up and put it on the iTunes. Want to thank you, all of our podcast listeners that are listening on other platforms. That's really cool. If you don't mind, give us some podcast platform reviews and, keep it realer. I guess what we're going to do now is move on to the next deal, huh?
Next time we're tackling something smoking, follow us at Real Meat Stick, at Smoker Builder. And for the scoop, keep those pits clean, nerds.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, buddy. Well, I'll catch you later. Have a great evening. See you guys.
You as well.